Have you noticed this? The world we live in today have changed since...
As the Chinese government scrambles to contain the virus,
Chinese health authorities are still working to identify the virus.
The number of cases of COVID-19 outside China has increased.
1,000 new cases of COVID-19. That's a weekly record, and the U.S. is quickly approaching its record number of hospitalized patients.
Things have never been the same after the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, both for the rich and the poor. The rich got richer, and the poor, of course, got poorer. This further increased the gap between the rich and the poor.
It's been a year of pain for so many and massive gains for a select few billionaires. The combined wealth of the 657 billionaires in the country grew more than $1.3 trillion.
Zuckerberg is worth an estimated $255 billion, and Bezos is worth an estimated $233 billion.
The virus affected all economies around the world, both the advanced one like the US and developing one like India. Many people lost their jobs, businesses, and even loved ones because of the virus. Governments in many countries told people to stay at home to stop the virus from spreading.
Stay at home during this pandemic.
The German Chancellor has announced a new national lockdown.
But China is still in the grips of a fierce COVID-19 spread. The country has announced a fresh lockdown.
They also brought in money and plans to stop their economies from collapsing. For example, the US Federal Reserve injected $4.6 trillion into the economy through the government, but the money ended up benefiting the rich, like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and other billionaires. Imagine a billionaire like Elon Musk increasing his net worth by 1,000% in 2021, right after the peak of the virus. Sounds crazy, isn't it? Meanwhile, the poor were left with little to no benefits at all. That's why YouTube channels like Gary's Economics and Robert Rich are creating videos warning about this huge gap between the rich and the poor.
I don't think you can justify some people living in extreme luxury whilst half of society is struggling to eat.
In the 1970s, the wealthiest 1% owned about 20% of the nation's total household wealth. Now, they own over 35%.
And they suggest possible solutions to reduce the gap.
We need to reform the tax system so that it doesn't just tax the income of working people, but also taxes the wealth of the super rich.
Tax great accumulations of wealth. They should pay their fair share.
I think the way we need to change our world is to tax the richest people in society much, much more.
In December 2019, the COVID-19 virus was discovered in Wuhan, China. It then spread across the world in early 2020, causing fear and panic. Countries like the UK, US, and others started imposing lockdown to reduce the spread. Now, a lockdown is a policy imposed by the government to restrict the movement of its citizens in times of chaos. And this time, the chaos was COVID-19 virus. The lockdown had a negative effect on economies of many countries because it reduced the economic activities like production, consumption, and distribution of goods and services. Many companies had to close down.
1 in 6 businesses closed their doors this year and next, instead of the usual 1 in 8.
29% of those businesses are currently closed.
On more than 110,000 restaurants closed their doors.
Restaurants, bars, and nightlife venues were hit hard by the lockdown. About 60% of businesses in the US closed down permanently, but these were mostly small businesses. The worst hits were in the retail industry. Companies like Pier 1 and Steinmart in the US actually closed down.
It is going to be closing for good.
Steinmart in Terre Haute is closing.
Why JCPenney was purchased after filing for bankruptcy.
JCPenney has filed for
Chapter 11 bankruptcy, becoming the largest retail to fall victim to the coronavirus.
Their businesses relied on people visiting their stores to purchase goods. So with the lockdown in place, they were left with option of going bankrupt, closing down some of their stores, or being purchased by bigger competitors. Even Microsoft, a major tech company, also planned to close down some of its retail stores. Some retailers, seeing the negative impact of the lockdown, adopted e-commerce, which is basically the buying and selling of goods on the internet, so they could stay in business and also survive the challenges that came with the lockdown. Apart from the retail industry, other top industries like manufacturing, real estate, and more faced serious disruptions. With all this going on in these industries, stores closing down, businesses facing disruption, and some going bankrupt, about 1.2 million people lost their jobs in the retail industry alone. That was tragic. And it wasn't just the retail industry. Other people across different sectors also lost their jobs. The International Labour Organization reported that nearly half of the world workers were at immediate risk of losing their jobs, which would force more people into poverty around the world.
The coronavirus outbreak could cause up to 25 million job losses.
British Airways, they said they're going to have to cut about 12,000 jobs. The owners of Upper Crust, about 5,000. It all amounts to tens of thousands of jobs lost.
California alone lost 925,000 more jobs.
Recent African Union study suggests that the continent may lose up to 20 million jobs.
The UK government tried to help employees at Flybe to find new jobs. Now, Flybe was a UK airline that collapsed, risking the loss of 2,000 jobs. So, the UK government helped the workers to keep the economy going. In the US, about 30 million people, around 15% of the workforce, applied for unemployment benefits. This was insane, but they had no choice because there were no jobs and no income to pay their bills. The number of people applying for unemployment benefits kept rising each week, further worsening the US economy.
6 million people filed for unemployment benefits. Well, that means nearly 17 million Americans have lost their jobs.
In the space of just 2 weeks, 10 million people have found themselves without work.
6.6 million Americans applied for unemployment last week.
With the loss of jobs, businesses collapsed, and widespread disruption, the stock market crashed. Major indexes like the S&P 500, Dow Jones, and Nasdaq all fell. The S&P 500 dropped by 11.5%, Dow Jones by 12.4%, and Nasdaq by 10.5%.
Even after gains last week, the market is still far below levels seen before the pandemic.
The Dow lost nearly 3,000 points, closing at 20,188. That is nearly a 13% drop. The Nasdaq plunged 970 points, and the S&P was down 324 points.
This was like a nightmare. But the US Federal Reserve, the country's central bank, intervened to save the economy. They created new money through a process known as quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is when the Federal Reserve creates new money electronically and uses it to buy government bonds and other financial assets. The purpose was to boost the economy by encouraging borrowing, spending, and investing. Because during the lockdown, individuals and businesses cut back on their spending and no one was willing to borrow. So, quantitative easing encouraged borrowing, spending, and investing. But there was a problem. The rich didn't spend much. In fact, they saved most of their money, while the poor spent almost all of theirs out of necessity. They had to pay for things like house rents, mortgages, and food, which eventually went back to the rich. Because the rich own most of the houses and stores where poor people buy things. This further increased the gap between the rich and the poor. Quantitative easing also made the stock market rise.
This approach aimed to provide liquidity and stabilize financial markets.
But the stock market climbed and climbed. By June 8th, it had gained 38%.
But you may be thinking, at least some other people benefited from the stock market going up apart from the rich. Yes, it did. But here's the truth. At that time, about 50% of the US stock market was owned by the rich. So in the end, it mostly benefited a small group of rich people.
Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg all saw their bank accounts swell amidst the global crisis.
Bezos and Musk now own more wealth than the bottom 40%. And meanwhile, we're looking at more hunger in America than at any time in decades.
The 10 richest men in the world saw their combined wealth increase by $1.5 trillion during the lockdown, while 163 million people around the world were driven into poverty. That's not good at all. During the lockdown, many rich people were making huge amounts of money. People like Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, the world's largest online retailer, and Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of popular social media platform Facebook. they made a lot of money because they operated online businesses, so the lockdown didn't really affect them. In fact, it helped them since more people were at home during that period.
Amazon, RBC saying that Amazon could be poised to be a big winner post-COVID.
Amazon, the e-commerce to cloud technology giant, has announced the expansion across 6 US cities. Amazon reported an $88.9 billion in record sales.
The issues faced by the retail industry during the lockdown didn't affect Amazon. They expanded instead, unlike many other retail companies that were struggling. Another company in the retail industry that also expanded was Instacart. During the lockdown, when people were losing their jobs, it was actually looking to hire 300,000 gig workers because of a surge in the demand for their services. Can you imagine that? Other companies were going through hard times, while some were just growing. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, an electric car company, he was one of the largest beneficiaries of the quantitative easing done by the US Federal Reserve. Because during the stock market boom in the lockdown, Tesla stock performed exceptionally well, boosting his net worth by over 1,000% in just 1 year. He didn't just benefit from that, he also received government subsidies worth billions of dollars. Government subsidies are basically financial support given to businesses to help them grow. Other billionaires also saw their net worth increase, especially those running tech companies. These tech companies include Facebook, Google, and Oracle. Billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg saw his net worth increase by 101%. Larry Page saw an increase of 125%, and Jeff Bezos by 67%. The list goes on and on, but I just mentioned a few. Most of the billionaires I mentioned are from the US, but the same thing happened in other parts of the world too. Having said all this, some people may argue, well, at least the economy is still healthy, but that's not the truth. I know the rise of the stock market often looks like a sign that the economy is healthy and that everyone are benefiting. But if you can remember, I said that during the lockdown, the rich already owned 50% of the US stock market, and that wealth was concentrated among just a few hundreds of people compared to the rest of the US population. Now, that percentage of ownership has increased to 64%, meaning more wealth is being concentrated among the rich, while many other people are being pushed into poverty. So when the stock market rises every year, it really means that the wealth of the rich is rising every year.
The 10 richest men saw their wealth increase by $540 billion. This would be enough to lift the entire world out of poverty.
The wealth of the top two, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, has risen by $140 billion so far this year.
We can tax them, it's in our power, and we can do it.
The super wealthy have to pay their fair share, placing a 2% tax on wealth in excess of $50 million.
Taxing the wealth of the rich would be very effective because the rich always try as much as possible to evade taxes, while the poor pay taxes on every income they earn. Governments around the world can start by imposing a 99% one-off windfall tax on the wealth gained by the rich during COVID-19. A windfall tax is a tax imposed on individuals or businesses that make extremely large profits. A windfall tax on the 10 richest men alone will generate $812 billion. That's a massive amount of money. Apart from the 99% windfall tax, government can also create new laws that allow for the redistribution of wealth and remove laws that widen the gap between the rich and the poor. Monopoly is another way the rich keep getting richer. For example, if I am the only one selling a particular product in the market, I can easily accumulate huge wealth over a long period of time, just like in the case of Google, which has been accused of operating as a monopoly before.
A U.S. federal judge ruled that Google has an illegal monopoly on internet search and advertising.
Governments can address this by limiting monopolies among companies worldwide. This will not only reduce the gap between the rich and the poor, but also empower the poor and boost the economy. The solution I've mentioned so far focus on what the government can do. But the question is, what can you and I do to help? Popular YouTube channels like Gary's Economics in the UK.
This is Gary's Economics, and today we're going to talk about tax.
And Robert Rich in the US, who is the co-founder of Inequality Media Civic Action, a non-profit organization, and also a former US Secretary of Labor.
Inequalities have continued to widen. Corruption and bribery have worsened. We were on the way to losing our democracy.
They are already doing an exceptional job in trying to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. What you can do individually is to support them in what they are doing. Because if they achieve their goals, it will be a win for everybody.
What do you think? Do you support a wealth tax? Let us know in the comments. If you found this video informative, be sure to watch our video on the big picture. And as always, be sure to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one.
Come together and all agree that that's what we're going to do. So, yeah, support the channel, tell your friends, tell your family. If we want to tax them, we can, and we really should. Thank you.
Let's take a second and imagine a world with less of a gap between the rich and the poor. What do you think such a world would look like? It would be a world with fewer mental health challenges, especially for the younger ones.
A big part of the reason why people, especially young people, are having mental health problems is because it's increasingly impossible just to be able to afford the basics of life for most people.
Not only mental health, but the overall well-being of all individuals would improve. A world where more people can be educated and live a good life. Because ignorance is truly a disease. Human capital, which is the skill set possessed by an individual, would increase. Because there would be easy access to education in such a world. And in turn, people would contribute positively to the economy. I myself would love to live in such a world where I don't have to struggle so much just to pay my bills. So it's up to all of us to do the right thing and create a better future. Thank you all for watching up to this point. It shows that I have been able to provide value to you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. You can share this video with your loved ones as well, so they can become more aware of the kind of world we live in and its financial system. Thank you once more, and